Chapter 1. A new dawn. The sky over what was once Chicago burned a sickly orange, the sun barely visible through the thick haze of ash. Smoke and soot drifted like ghosts through the air, clinging to the ruins of toppled skyscrapers and abandoned vehicles, their shattered windows reflecting a world that no longer existed. Fires still burned in the distance, remnants of battles long lost. The wind carried the scent of charred flesh and decay, a grim reminder that humanity had turned against itself in a war no one truly won. Now America was a wasteland, a husk of its former self, where survival was the only law. Ethan and Cole had known each other before the world ended. Best friends since childhood, they had survived the nuclear fallout, the roaming warbands, and the sickness that followed. But every day was a battle against the odds. Ethan was tall and lean, his once athletic frame now gaunt from years of hardship. His dark brown hair was shaggy, matted with dirt, and his hazel eyes, once full of life, now held a hardened edge. He wore a battered leather jacket over a scavenged tactical vest, his rifle slung tightly over his shoulder. Every movement was measured, careful. He had learned that one mistake could be fatal. Cole, slightly shorter and more muscular, had a rugged look to him. His dirty blonde hair was cropped short, and a thin scar ran down his cheek, a souvenir from an ambush months prior. He wore a heavy coat reinforced with makeshift armor, his hands always ready to draw the pistol strapped to his thigh. Despite everything, he still carried a smirk that hinted at the man he used to be, the one who cracked jokes even in the worst situations. They moved through the skeletal remains of the city, scavenging whatever they could find. Water was scarce, food even more so. They avoided the remnants of the government's military forces, now little more than self-serving warlords, and the gangs that thrived in the lawless ruins. Ethan clutched his rifle as they moved through an abandoned grocery store. The shelves had long been stripped bare, but Cole, ever the optimist, searched the back rooms. A single can of beans, half crushed, lay in the corner. Cole picked it up, a small victory in a world that had none. A noise outside, a rustling, then heavy boots crunching over glass. Ethan froze, signaling to Cole. They had learned to read each other without speaking. They pressed themselves into the shadows as a group of men, armed and clad in makeshift armor, stalked through the aisles. "Scavengers," Cole whispered. "They look like red vultures." The Red Vultures were one of the deadliest factions to rise from the ashes, mercenaries, killers, and worse. If they were caught, there would be no mercy. Ethan tapped Cole's arm and they slipped out the back door, moving swiftly but silently through the wreckage. The city had ears, and any noise could mean death. They ran until their lungs burned, ducking into an old subway station. The tunnels were a haven for survivors, but also for things far worse. Mutants, byproducts of radiation, prowled in the dark. Others, desperate and savage, lived like rats in the underground. They would rest for the night if they could. But as Ethan kept watch, gripping his rifle, he knew this was just another battle in a war that would never end. Dawn broke, though the sky remained gray, thick with the dust of the dead. Ethan and Cole crouched behind the remains of a burned-out car, peering at the Red Vulture camp sprawled near the collapsed highway. There was no way around them, not without risking an open firefight. "We need to take the tunnels," Ethan said, voice low. Cole scowled. "Are you insane? Those tunnels are worse than the vultures. We don't know what's down there. We could get lost or worse." Ethan shook his head. "It's 1 mile. We stick to the map and move fast. You want to take our chances out here?" Cole hesitated, glancing at the camp. More vultures were arriving. He let out a frustrated sigh. "Fine, but if we die in some rat nest, I'm haunting your ass." They slipped into the subway entrance, the air thick with mildew and decay. The tunnels stretched into darkness, the distant echoes of dripping water the only sound. Their flashlights cut through the gloom, revealing rusted tracks and abandoned trains, their doors hanging open like gaping mouths. Graffiti and old resistance posters clung to the walls, faded relics of a time when people still had hope. They moved cautiously, weapons drawn, their footsteps muffled by layers of dust and debris. A deep, guttural growl crawled from further down the tunnel. "Shit," Cole whispered, raising his pistol. What was that? Something skittered in the shadows. Then a low hiss echoed through the tunnel. A hulking shape emerged from the darkness, twisted and grotesque. The creature had once been a wolf, but radiation had warped it beyond recognition. Patches of fur clung to rotting flesh, its eyes glowed an unnatural yellow, and its elongated limbs ended in jagged, bone-like claws. Its jaw was stretched wider than any normal wolf's, lined with rows of serrated teeth, dripping with black saliva. The beast lunged. Ethan fired first, his bullet tearing into its shoulder, but the creature barely slowed. It crashed into them, sending Cole sprawling against the tunnel wall. Ethan barely had time to roll before razor-sharp claws slashed the concrete where he had just stood. Cole scrambled to his feet, firing a shot that grazed the monster's flank. It howled in rage, turning on him. Ethan seized the moment, unsheathing his hunting knife and driving it into the beast's exposed side. It shrieked, its claws raking Ethan's arm before Cole fired another shot, this one striking the thing in its skull. The creature collapsed in a twitching heap, black blood pooling around its body. Ethan panted, gripping his bleeding arm. "Still think the tunnels were worse?" Cole chuckled breathlessly, shaking his head. "Next time, let's just fight the damn vultures." They pressed on, but Ethan was bleeding badly. His steps grew sluggish, his breath shallow. The tunnel exit was in sight, a rusted metal door at the end of the corridor. Cole rattled the handle. "Shit, it's locked." Behind them, another growl echoed. Footsteps, heavy, measured, and closing in. The rancid stench of decay filled the air. Cole clenched his jaw, raising his pistol. 2 bullets left. "Not like this," he muttered. He banged on the door. "Hey, anyone in there? We need help." The footsteps grew louder. Cole gritted his teeth, readying his knife, but at the last moment, the door swung open. A figure stood in the doorway, silhouetted against flickering light. A woman, tall and wiry, with sharp green eyes and dark, braided hair. She wore a patchwork of armor and carried a sawed-off shotgun. "Move!" she barked. Cole threw Ethan inside just as the door slammed shut. The creature outside howled in frustration, scratching at the metal.